So welcome to week 2 of New Media Applications. I'm impressed by your posts that we got into as far as the discussion thread having to do with connection, big cities, how apps kind of play into that. I don't know if you kind of skirted that point a little bit, and so I just kind of wanted to underscore what it really was that I wanted you to come away with, and that is how applications, how technology can go through and help us make certain kinds of connections. Between human interfaces and machines and other types of technology that's out there to go through and maybe improve things. The video was created by Ericsson, and you should know that Ericsson is a manufacturer of devices that connect. All right, so there's a bit of an agenda with them to go through and promote the idea of connecting things through a network of some sort, because they're the ones that are making the network routers and the network connections. Ericsson is Northern Europe's Cisco, as it is here in the United States. But I think they're pretty progressive, and they're extraordinarily socially minded there too. So that's why I guess I allow that kind of content into a curriculum that focuses on new media applications. If you've had me for social media, you've seen a couple of Ericsson clips within that as well. I'm also hoping that you've read Om Malik's article on happy and utility, and I kind of wanted to use that for this week's theme or topic, or as we go through and kind of advance our introduction into this concept of new media applications and what that means. And two things. I'm going to put up a bit of a little kind of a taxonomy that looks at 4 ways to kind of categorize the concept of the effects of new media applications, and I'll get into that perhaps in a different clip. I don't want these to be too terribly long. But I want to address the happy utility kind of thing here initially, and to do that with a personal experience, with a personal example. If you've had me for social media, I've talked a little bit about an application that I developed about 8 years ago called Jiminy Cricket. And you're also aware of the failure of Jiminy Cricket as well. And I'm using that and my experience to teach the concepts of this class because I think there's a lot to learn. Not only from the mechanical stages, the phases of putting an application together and seeing what that does, but also from a standpoint of its communication effects. What does it really mean? And from a standpoint of organizing people to go through and create something along that line. For those of you who don't know, Jiminy Cricket was an application that was derived from an idea of what if we had the ability, what if an application had the ability to go through and comb through all of the media you post individually as a user on social media, your text content, what you might blog, what you might even email about. In fact, the application was set up to where you could steer it towards anything you wanted to. If all you wanted it to do was look at your social media posts, then that's all it would do. If you wanted to give it carte blanche and let it look at everything, it would do that as well. Now, some of you are probably already freaking out about this, and I get that, okay? And I'll address that maybe here in a bit. So what the app would do then was it would go through and kind of get a contextual sense of how you're doing. And it would build a profile of you based on your search history, browser history, based on the kinds of messages you get involved with. And it would do that through the main context of communication. For those of you who wonder why I'm always preaching that at the beginning of every single class, physical, psychological, social, cultural, temporal, is because I have created an algorithm that uses that information to create artificial intelligence on people, on what they're thinking, on what they're doing, maybe even anticipatory elements to that as well, what they might do. All this was wrapped up into the concept of the application, which we call Jiminy Cricket. So basically, it would go through and analyze your data, whatever data you would allow it to analyze, and then go through and respond back to you on 2 different levels. It would push notify you with a text message if that's what you wanted, or the advanced level was, and this is where it kind of gets even creepier for some people, it would call you. and give you a message that way. And it would use a voice, perhaps, of your choice. And I'll get into that later on if you're interested in that. I posted one of the pro forma documents for Jiminy Cricket that we were using to generate money to raise funds for this in our initial round of fundraising, which was $8 million for this. I procured $7 million to go through and fund the development of the application. We got a proof of concept working where the app was actually working. We had some beta users as well. And we discovered over the course of the app's gathering data that we probably should have limited the amount of data it was gathering on people for two reasons. One was it gathered so much data that it required quantum computing to be able to store, digest, interpret, and use that data in a meaningful way for our users. And the second problem with that, as you can guess, was privacy. How do you keep that much data on a user private? How do you keep it out of the auspices of the NSA or anybody else who wants to go through and hack into your data and do bad things to you? So those are the two main things that shut Jiminy Cricket down. And ironically, there are iterations of Jiminy Cricket out there. Certainly any kind of smart speaker is using not the same algorithm, but algorithms that come pretty close to what we were developing with contextual analysis and artificial intelligence to listen, to take in a message, to interpret that message, and then go out into the internet and find an answer to that message, whatever that answer might be. Google has been using this kind of algorithm for a long time, for as long as Jiminy Cricket's been around, or at least been trying to be developed that way. If years ago, if you open up a Gmail message, you email somebody about looking at a new mountain bike, and then suddenly an ad for a mountain bike pops up into your Facebook feed, you know what I'm talking about. That's an indication that people are using that kind of data to go through and market to you. And that's really been the downfall to these kinds of applications. And I didn't want that to be the downfall of Jiminy Cricket. First off, we didn't want to have any advertising on it. And secondly, we wanted it to be as affordable as possible, like 25 cents, 50 cents maybe on a subscription basis, on a monthly subscription basis. I can't remember what the numbers actually folded out to be. You could take a look at the pro forma and look on the financials to see what that was. Long story short, I pulled the plug on it because of the vulnerability of data and because I was turning into a person that I didn't want to be. In trying to go through and put this thing together and get it out there. But that's a topic for a different video. The reason why I'm telling you this is because it's the background from which I'm talking about, especially when it comes to this concept of happy and utility. So what I want you to do is go through and read maybe the executive briefing section perhaps of the pro forma and the file. It'll be uploaded into this week's module. You can go through and take a look at that. And since this video is already at 8 minutes and 30 seconds, I'll close this one out and then I'll open up another one and that talks a little bit more focused on the concept of happy and utility and what Jiminy Cricket was all about. All right? See you there.